What's up, everyone? I want to go over something that I've been wanting to go over for a while. I just haven't really done it until I had a little bit more time to fully explore why I believe this, and going from there. The reason what we're going to talk about, is what I think is, if you are a small engine repair or work on small engines at all, you're eventually going to have to get a welder. It's just what happens. It's just what happens. You deal with engines which are metal and machinery which have metal. You're going to need a welder. Now, here's a MIG. It also does flux core. Over here is a TIG, and it also does stick. So, my point of the video is which one's the best one for a small engine, and I want to say, probably without any type of doubt in my mind, it's going to be the TIG welder. And it's mainly because of these couple reasons. First reason is it's very versatile. I can weld aluminum with this one. Not all TIG welders can. If you do buy one, you want to make sure you get an AC TIG welder, not just a DC, but an AC TIG welder. This one's no elaborate piece of machinery. It's just a square wave from Lincoln Electric. It's pretty standard. No real bells or whistles on it. It works great, and I have no issues with it. It does exactly what I need it to do, and I'm happy about it. Second reason is it can do very, very detailed welding. Even if you're not very good at it, in my experience, the learning curve, for me at least, is a lot easier to learn how to TIG weld than it ever was to MIG weld. Granted, I had a few problems with this machine when I first got it, so it took me a while to really diagnose it, so I could be coming from a bad point of view. But I'm pretty sure most people will say that a MIG welder is not necessarily a surgical welding machine. And a lot of times when you're working with small engines, you do have to have very detailed welds because of just the sheer size or thickness of the material. Reason number 3 is the versatility of it. If I need to change going from steel to aluminum, all I have to do is walk over here and grab a different type of rod. If I were going to change anything on this machine, granted, it technically can do stainless and aluminum, I would have to take the spool out, re-spool everything. It's going to be a process. Not to mention, you can get smaller spools, but the larger ones can get a little expensive. The TIG rods, they're roughly probably comparable in price, but you can easily get a small section and it's not that expensive, especially if it's something you don't weld very often, like stainless. So that's another good reason why, just the versatility. It's very, very easy. It's very, very quick. It's just hands down no problem. And with this, I've seen plenty of people weld aluminum with this style of machine. Not this one, of course, but this style. Granted, they usually have to have a special type of gun. But I've never really seen anyone weld cast aluminum with this. It might be a thing, I don't know. I just haven't really seen it. I've seen dozens of times when people have done cast aluminum repairs with a TIG welder. Spoiler alert. Take, for instance, this Briggs & Stratton right here. That's steel. The block, however, is not. It's cast aluminum. If, for instance, I had to, on a 6S, which, trust me, is not the easiest thing to find, I was able to do a small repair on it because I was able to do I was able to weld cast aluminum. It was dirty, it was annoying, I had to grind my tungsten a bunch of times. It was a giant pain, but I was able to do it. Something I could definitely not say I can do with my MIG welder. And fourth, and this is going to be subjective to me, and probably because I'm not very good at MIG welding, but I like the look of a TIG weld better. It's a very clean weld, especially if you take your time on it and you really put some effort into it. You can get a very good looking weld with this machine. You can with this one as well, don't get me wrong. It's just, in my opinion, the best looking MIG welds are what the okay looking TIG welds look like. My opinion, that's just, so don't even count number 4 if you are hardcore MIG. That's just my opinion. But this isn't all good over here, and this isn't all bad, trust me. We're going to get into the negatives and the bonuses with this machine, or these machines. The real bonus with this, however, is the fact that you do have to clean with TIG welding, and you should with MIG, don't get me wrong, but in my experience, I've never really had to clean to the full extent as I would usually with TIG. I'll grind it down, put some clean bare metal or bright metal on there, MIG it, there's no issue. I will do the exact same thing, except I'll use acetone with the TIG machine. It's an extra step, it's really not that much of a big deal, but it is something that, you know, you do have to take in consideration with this machine. Another downside of this is it's very slow, which is kind of a good and bad thing. It's bad if you have a lot of welding to do. It's very good if you're kind of starting and you need to work up to it, especially if you just have a small weld. If you're going to weld like an inch or two with either one of these machines, the time savings is going to be so minimal, it's not even worth talking. If you're going to be making a giant cart, however, and you have a time frame, that's going to be your choice, because this is going to take probably double as long, especially if you have to prep the metal in a very specific way. So, you know, depending on your circumstance, it could be different. That's why I'm saying small engines, because this is no way, shape, or form a fabrication type of opinion. This is just repairs on small engine machines, potentially even larger automotive like cars, sedans, trucks, whatever. I've used I've used more of the TIG on a few vehicles. I did use a MIG on one, but that was about it. So there's that. So that's kind of a downfall of a TIG machine, but yeah, the other downfall is that machine is about double the price of that one. Now, that is also subjective. There are much cheaper alternatives out there, but considering that these are both what I would consider entry-level welders or minimal use welders, let's just put it that way, they're kind of, in my opinion, the same class. And even then, that one was a whole lot cheaper. So your out-of-pocket cost to really get started is going to be significantly less. I'm not talking about a helmet, because you're going to have to get a helmet. The gloves, you're going to have to get gloves. You're going to get all that for either one of these. However, just purchasing the equipment itself, that's going to be cheaper, I would say, almost every time, but I'm sure there's exceptions out there. I don't know if it's just my local shop is just being a giant pain, but for whatever reason, I can get 75/25 any day of the week. No problem. It doesn't matter the size. I can get it. 100% argon, however, for whatever reason, I have to call to make sure they have it. I just don't know if it's where I live that they just don't carry as much or what. But I've ran into about 2 occasions when they didn't have it, and I would have to wait about 3 or 4 days, and I did have to MIG something. And I never ran into that with the 75/25 mix. And just for clarification, you cannot use 75/25 in a TIG machine. You will most definitely cause damage to your tungsten. One of the other benefits, however, I will say is over there's some anti-spatter cream. This machine is very clean. Like, you don't have any sparking, you don't have any smoke, you don't have any spatter, you don't have anything. It's almost next to silent if the machine not including the fan, but the actual process of TIG welding is very, very, very quiet. You barely hear anything. Majority of the time, it's just when the arc starts, and that's about it. And, well, let me rephrase. DC welding, you barely hear anything. AC welding, you'll hear that normal AC hum. But either way, in both occasions, you are still going to have a very clean weld, and you can weld in areas where I would say that one is not a good idea, mainly because look over there, there's gasoline. I will never weld anywhere near gasoline. With this, it has to be a very long distance away, just in case I get a random, overachieving spark that wants to travel long and far. This machine, I don't have a problem unless I'm using stick, in which case that is a problem, but this is strictly saying just TIG welding, of course. What are the other downfalls of the machine? Well, it's not very, with the exception of using stick, which I would say, a lot of people probably do use, especially outdoors, for like if you're doing like a repair in the field. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I'm going to just say that, I would prefer to always TIG weld, mainly for the fact of the reasons why I told you. The downfalls that I've told you about, or at least the cons of it, the majority of the con that I would see is the price. Once you can get over that, it's really not much more to maintain it. It's really not much more to buy the consumables, even though there can be some crazy expensive consumables out there, trust me. It goes for both, but these do appear to be a lot cheaper. But this is a whole lot more customizable, so with more customization options, you're going to run into a lot more cost. But just going off, you get a standard kit, you get a stubby and everything. It's still going to cost, but once you get over that hurdle, that is no longer a downfall. The main downfall I see is the time, and both of the actual welding and learning how to weld it. Some people I've tried to teach have absolutely no ability to get it down because it takes a really long time, and then they pick up this and it's like night and day difference. Like they started off poorly, you literally can see them getting better, and just as the welds go along. So some people just take more to this type of process. So those two things just being the main downfalls of it. Weighing out the options, I would rather have a more detailed and clean weld, just to sacrifice a little time. If it's going to take me an extra 5 minutes, but I would have a higher quality weld that is more visually appealing, and that would just be a better solution in my opinion. Let me give you a story. I don't have it anymore because I gave it back to the owner, but I had a Honda concrete shaker. It has like this little snake on the end of it, and in the end, when the clutch engages, it wraps around it practically is the same type of mechanism as a weed eater, except at the end it just has like a rotating shaft, and that shaft is heavy on one end and light on another, so it shakes. Well, it broke. I tried to MIG it, and the sheer push or start of starting to weld this, trying to weld something so tiny and not very heavy, and it just wasn't doing a good job. So I ended up having to scrap it. I cut everything off, ground it down, went over to the store, got a couple extra pieces, TIG welded it, and it was amazing. It looked like it came out of the factory like that. There's been countless other times, and trust me, when I've been repairing decks, I will use a MIG welder, but that's mainly just for the fact that I like to go in between when I can. I can guarantee I could weld it with a TIG welder, but in times when I know I can MIG it, I'll use the MIG just to kind of brush up on my own skills. But if I only had a TIG welder, it would not be a problem. It would be done, it would look good, and there wouldn't be an issue. If I only had a MIG welder though, I would consistently run into issues at my current skill level. That could just be me, but just coming from my experience between these two processes and this style of work, hands down, I would say the TIG welder is a much better buy. Even though it is more expensive, it's going to give you a much higher quality weld, and you're going to, I would say you're going to provide more, not only a better solution or better product to your customer or your friend or your family member, but it's going to, in your mind, you're going to know it's going to be a good weld. It's really hard to get a bad weld on a TIG welder that you don't know about, but it's in my experience, it's very easy to get a very appealing looking weld with this and having it break very quickly. That's just me. However, there's probably people who have the exact opposite problem. So that's just me. But not even taking that into consideration, just the size differences that you can work on, the TIG welder has my money down, no problem. So this is my opinion. If you agree, put a thumbs up. If you have any counter arguments, put a counter argument down. If you only have a MIG welder and you love it, then put that there too. But also just understand that this is how I use it. This is how I decided to go down a path, and I've never had a real heavy bump I couldn't go through. I have had a few with this machine. Now, one final example, and this is kind of when I was looking at it, the reason why I decided to go with a TIG welder a few years ago, before I even had this TIG welder. I was helping someone weld a exhaust for a Honda Civic. It was the total just fart cannon exhaust. It wasn't mine, luckily, so that, of course, I would never do that to my own car. But, well, let me rephrase. I have, but it doesn't sound like I welded a Folgers can on it. Let's just put it that way. He took it to a shop a long time ago, and it's about 2 years. They welded it up. The weld rusted, because where I live is very wet. The weld rusted. He had an exhaust leak. I ground everything down, and I stainless steel TIG welded the exhaust back on. Now, the exhaust itself was stainless steel, but they used a plain steel type of wire, and it caused it to rust and eventually fail. So knowing that was where it got me. And then from then, I just had a situation after situation after situation after situation where TIG welding was always a better option. I could go on for hours. I'm not going to. Leave a comment if you want me to leave more, but I'm going to go ahead and leave you with that. Like I said, if you agree, let me know. If you disagree, let me know. But I'll catch you in the next video. Make sure to keep watching. Definitely subscribe. I'm also on Instagram now as Small Engine 101. So if you want to take a look at some of the pictures of the stuff that doesn't always make the video, I'd love to see you on there as well. Have a good rest of your evening. Good night.